Hello, and welcome to Artfully Told, where we share true stories about meaningful encounters with art.
I think artists help people have different perspectives on every aspect of life.
All I can do is put my part out into the world.
It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. It doesn't have to be perfect ever, really. I mean, as long as you're enjoying doing it and you're trying your best, that can be good enough.
Art is something that you can experience with your senses and that you just experience as so beautiful.
Hi, friends. Whether you are just getting started or you're a seasoned professional looking to up your game, I have an exciting opportunity for you. Did you know that I am actually the creator of 10 different courses online that range from ballet, jazz, tap. They also include a mindset detox course and 2 stretch and tone courses. So if you're looking to start a new hobby or get a little bit fitter, or you're looking to do a deep dive into your mindset and really perform a true detox, I have the course for you, and I would love to help you out with that. So if you go to elevateart.thinkific.com, you will see all of the different courses I've created. You don't have to step in a classroom to take your first dance class. I teach a signature 20 moves in 20 days course that allows you to learn 20 steps in just 20 days. It's a lot of fun. We have a great time together. And I think you're going to absolutely love the different courses. And Artfully Told listeners get a little something from me. So if you go, you'll sign up and use the promo code Artfully Told, all one word. And when you do so, you'll get 15% off the purchase of any and all your favorite courses. All right, listeners, enjoy that. Again, it's elevateart.thinkific.com. See you there. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Artfully Told. I'm your host, Lindsey, and I am very excited to have as my guest today, Jessie Katz Greenberg, who is a craft content creator, podcast co-host, and a DIY content director at Jumprope, which all of those things sound super cool. So all together, I'm just so thrilled that you're here, Jessie, and can't wait to chat art with you.
Thank you so much, Lindsey. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Well, I would love if you wouldn't mind starting off by sharing a little bit about your background, sort of what got you into art and crafting and podcasting and all the things. I'm just so excited to hear about you.
Sure. So it is, quite the journey from art to sort of where I am now. So I'll try to give a brief rundown. I have always just been creative and obsessed with crafting and making. I went to art school and fell in love with graphic design and typography there. So that's what I ended up majoring in. And after college, worked as a graphic designer, but I really missed, being more hands-on with my art and making things with my hands now that everything I was doing was on the computer. So that really set me off on this journey of just experimenting with my own craft, my own work, and networking within the maker community. So I started by doing just a lot of hand lettering illustrations. I really started doing hand-drawn Facebook statuses, like before Instagram was a thing. I would draw my Facebook status and post a picture of it to Facebook, and sort of got into hand lettering illustration that way. So I had the opportunity to show some of my lettering in galleries and in cafes, and through that sort of morphed into, I had 2 handmade businesses selling handmade jewelry and selling stationery. I sold online on Etsy, at local boutiques and craft fairs. I was lucky enough to have some fun opportunities through those businesses. My jewelry was made out of recycled materials, so I got some cool local magazine write-ups and actually had it featured on the Today Show And this whole time, I was still working full-time as a graphic designer. That was always a constant, and I was just kind of finding all of these other creative outlets along the way. So eventually, I decided I needed to kind of run with these creative side businesses full time. So I left a really secure graphic design job in order to freelance full time so I could have more time to spend on my stationery business, specifically doing greeting cards and wedding stationery. And even through that, through running my own creative business, I was still outside of that looking for like this creative community. And that's when I started hosting craft nights with my friends. The art making part of my creative businesses was really fulfilling, but the actual business side of it, I realized I didn't love. And I feel like that was a difficult realization to come to as an artist. Like, this entrepreneur side of it is so tied to being an artist, and I kind of realized that I didn't love the business side of it as much. So we ended up moving to New York City. I got a job as a packaging graphic designer at a textile company, and this whole time the constant was always striving to find and be more dedicated in this creative maker community. So I started teaching workshops, a lot of craft workshops, everything from hand lettering to floral monogram wall hangings to embroidery to glass etching. I was teaching sometimes 3 nights a week after work and on weekends, and that is really what I was loving, was sharing my art with others. And that's how, so through all of this, through really just like pouring myself into this aspect of the creative community that I loved, that's how I ended up meeting Eliza Capitan, who is the creator and host of Craft Hangout. I guested on that podcast and then ended up joining as a co-host a few years ago. And through that, I met Jake, the CEO of Jumprope. And, a couple months after meeting him, joined Jumprope full-time as their DIY content director. So sort of made this major shift from being a graphic designer to now joining a tech startup and being able to be sort of like their liaison from the tech side of the company to the DIY art craft content creators that are creating on the app. So it was a long journey to end up where I am today, but it was one where I just kept sort of following my passions and following what I liked about crafting and art, and landed at this job now that I totally love.
Oh, I love that. Well, first of all, I'm so glad you found something that just touches on all the things that you love and are passionate about. I think that just sounds like such a synergistic opportunity, essentially. So very, like, it was hand-tailored for you, is what it sounds like.
Exactly. It was one of those things where I was like, I knew the full-time job I was at wasn't for me anymore, but I didn't know what I wanted. And it was just like, just keep doing what you love and something has to show up. It just has to. And luckily it did.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's inspirational also in the sense of, keep doing what you need to do, keep doing what you're passionate about. And even if it's on the side for a while, you just never know where one opportunity will beget another opportunity if you're just open. So how cool.
Exactly. And, this whole time I've just loved, especially when I was teaching workshops, I loved connecting with artists like who are on all different levels of their artistic journey. And then now at Jumprope, like, that's what I get to do even more so, since we're, an app specifically for creators sharing their skills and creating content. So it's been really great.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and I was just so struck by, looking back, it might seem like, oh, of course, this thing led to this thing led to this thing. But of course, when you're in it, you don't necessarily see how it's all going to eventually get woven together. But I really loved how you were talking about, you got to be this guest on this podcast. And then a couple of years or a little while after that, then you got to, have this opportunity to be co-host, and how that meant something else. And it's just such like the perfect example of things coming together because you didn't stop creating, you just created, and you've allowed your creativity to kind of evolve.
Exactly. Yeah. And just sort of followed like what I feel like I spent a lot of time at the beginning, especially when I was starting my businesses, spending a lot of time at the beginning, like thinking about, okay, this is what my mission is and this is what I want to do with it. And like doing all of this planning before things happened. And then I got into this phase letting things happen organically, and that's when that ended up being a better process for me. I know for some people planning is what gets them to where they need to be, but for me, just sort of being in this organic process was what worked better for sure.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Well, okay, so definitely some things really popped out at me of your story. And one of the biggest things I was like, oh my gosh, you were on the Today Show? How cool of an opportunity. Tell me about that.
So I know, and it was so long ago that I almost never bring that part up, but it's like, I feel like it's just a fun highlight in this journey. And the thing is, like, I personally was not on it, just my jewelry was, and it was part of this Earth Week celebration. And I made jewelry out of mostly recycled plastics, like recycled gift cards and credit cards, and also like disassembling and reassembling some vintage jewelry and things like that. So it ended up being featured on the Today Show as part of this Earth Week thing, where they featured, I think, 10 other artists creating art out of repurposed materials. So it was really cool to be in that collection of artists, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, definitely congrats on that. And I'm just curious, are you still doing any of those kinds of things on the side as well? Or do you find that your time is so, you've got a lot going on, so.
Yeah, I realized along the way that creating physical products and selling them was not, like, I had in my head, that's what you do as an artist. You create these physical items and you sell them. And I realized that's not what was super fulfilling to me. So I stopped doing that when I started teaching, because that's when I sort of realized that, like, teaching was what I enjoyed more. Like, having someone come from their job that they didn't see as creative and then have them come after work to my class and say, oh, I'm not going to make anything very creative because I just work in Excel spreadsheets all day. And then having them leave 2 hours later, having felt fulfilled and creative, that is where I was, feeling more passionate about art and crafting. So I sort of switched from selling products to fostering creativity in others. And that's what I do with my own content creation now. I still teach workshops and I share my own content on the Instagram and TikTok and all of that, and share a lot of craft tutorials. And so that's what I'm doing now, is really fostering that creativity in others.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and I think that's so cool too. I mean, you discovered that teaching is what you really loved, and like you said, sort of inspiring other people to embrace their creativity, or to feel like it's okay, not just okay, like it's good. I'm wondering if there are any moments when you've been teaching that really stand out as, oh my goodness, I got to witness that. That was such a cool moment, or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, there are a few good ones. So really that one, like, that's an actual story of a woman came to my class and was like, my thing is not going to look good. I just work in Excel all day. And that was like her disclaimer of, like, she can't be creative because she works with spreadsheets. And so to have her at the end of the class feel like, oh my God, look at this thing I made, like that, as her instructor, felt really awesome. Some other fun moments from classes. I was teaching a 3-week lettering workshop, and I had someone at the end of the workshop, we kind of like we start with very beginner skills, and then we work towards creating this like final lettering piece. And she created her final piece, and then during the 3rd class, when she was finishing it, she sort of photographed it, posted it on her social media, and sold it while we were sitting there in class. Like, sold her original artwork. And I was like, well, that's incredible that you just did that.
Wow.
I was like, right? It was amazing that she went from, beginner hand letterer to now, I mean, she could call herself a professional letterer. She just sold lettering artwork.
Wow.
What else? I think, yeah, it's just moments like that stand out. And then obviously the moment, just because it sort of set off this whole creative journey, was getting to network with people like Eliza from Craft Hangout, and, getting other opportunities outside of workshops as well was, ended up being great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you had also mentioned, I think previous to starting to teach in a more structured way, that you had hosted craft nights, which just sound like exactly my cup of tea. So I'm curious as to what those used to look like.
Yeah. So I'll be real honest. For a while, they were just sort of a facade for having like girls' nights and watching The Bachelor. Like, we got a bunch of cheese, turned on The Bachelor, and we brought craft projects, and I'd say like 50% of the time we crafted and 50% of the time we didn't. But it was just a good time to like get together with people and make something, see what everyone else was making. Sometimes one of us would bring something and like teach the others how to do it, or, you know, teach a new embroidery stitch, or we would do craft supply swaps and, you know, swap stuff that we had, get rid of our yarn stash and trade with each other. So it was just a good time to foster this creativity like within our own group of friends and learn from each other. And there's something so unique about crafting with people, like whether they're your friends in an environment like that, or whether it's in a workshop where I don't necessarily know the students, but we're all crafting together, or even if it's sharing a tutorial online and having people respond to it, where people are just so open while they're being creative. So in those times, crafting with friends, it was just a great time to like get into deeper conversation with each other, because you kind of just go there when you're meditating, like meditatively crafting. You just kind of get into these more open spaces. So it was nice to kind of foster deeper friendships with people that way too.
Yeah, of course. And I was chuckling when you were talking about it being sort of a facade for girls' nights, but I feel like that's the case with other things too, like book club. I mean, let's be real. It's a fun thing. I love it. But I mean, the food and drinks don't hurt anything.
Exactly. Like, it was like, people won't make fun of us for wanting to watch The Bachelor every week if we just say it's a craft night.
There you go. I love it. I love it. Well, like you said, how cool, because it fostered conversations that, you know, it's not like you might never have had, but to be able to have them on a more regular basis and keep up with each other's lives. I mean, that's pretty special to get to do that. So, yeah. Yeah, and I just think, I mean, I'm always amazed how crafting does that to, like I said, even perfect strangers. Like I was teaching a class once, and one of my students told our class that she was pregnant before she had told like half of her family. And it's just because you're in this like mode and you feel close to people, and it just happens. And I just think that's a beautiful thing about making art and crafting with people. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can relate to that a little bit. I was teaching dance classes, and when I got engaged, it was so exciting. I was just thrilled. I was over the moon, of course. And so the next day when I was teaching the students, it finally, like, I couldn't help it, right? I had told my family by then, but we hadn't like officially announced it. And I was just like, guys, like, you just can't contain it, you know, and that more small class environment and stuff. It was really special. They
awesome.
They were happy for me, but they were cracking up because, you know, I was just over the top. Oh, goodness. Well, that sounds lovely. So do you still do craft nights at all, or is it kind of a thing that maybe eventually you can resurrect after all this crazy goes away?
Yeah, we've done some virtual craft nights. It was several years ago when I started doing them with that group of friends, and I since then moved to New York City. I was not living far outside the city before. I was living like, you know, maybe a half hour, 45 minutes outside the city, but it's very different when you move into New York and then you don't have a car and you can't get out there all the time. So, and also just with then turning to teaching crafts and like basically professionally having craft nights, I didn't have as much time to do these other craft nights. But over the last year, we have resurrected them with some Zoom craft nights. We did, I think we all forced our husbands to do like a paint night together, and like Bob Ross paint along. And so we've been doing some stuff like that, but not weekly like we used to.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's still fun. I'm glad you get to keep up on it a little bit. Well, yeah, I know this question is going to probably on some level be a little bit impossible to answer, but I'm just curious, do you have a favorite craft, like something that you just gravitate towards if you're just like, I just need some art right now?
Yeah, it really changes a lot. It goes back and forth between a couple specific things. So one is definitely hand lettering, just because I still love typography as much as I did when I studied it in school for graphic design. I just didn't like being stuck on the computer all the time. So hand lettering is definitely one of those things. And when I like to be a little bit more free and less planned, it's usually embroidery or any type of upcycling. So like, you know, turning cardboard into something or repurposing something around the apartment, anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. Well, obviously, you know, you've, like we talked about at the beginning, you've kind of really allowed opportunities into your life and not shut them down as like, well, I had one vision and that's not the vision, so I'm not going for it. And I think that that's such a great skill to have or mindset to have. And so I'm kind of curious, do you have advice for somebody who might be interested in starting on the path to crafting or to be an artist, but is maybe a little hesitant or nervous or anything like that?
Yeah, I feel like this is the advice everyone gives, but I like honestly just start. Like, don't think that you have to do all of this planning ahead of time. Just start. And this is even the same advice like I give at work at Jumprope to creators who are nervous about starting video. It's the same thing. It's just start creating video content, because the thing is, you are not going to find out what you love and what fits your skill set and what you need. Like, you're not going to find this out until you just start making. So the advice is just start and kind of learn from your own process, learn what is fulfilling you, learn the aspects that aren't, and then kind of develop from there.
Sure. Yeah, I really like that. And yes, you're completely right. I think just diving in, just doing something. I think even if you're just start by writing a sentence, if you want to be an author, or,
Yes.
you know, paint one little bird or something, if you want to be a fine artist, you know, it's just, it's being courageous enough to take that first step, which is
exactly
challenging. I mean, but who knows where those adventures will lead you.
Exactly. And especially now, I feel like it's so challenging to take those first steps because everybody has this idea that things have to be perfect. And like, honestly, because of social media, people think that, especially for visual art, if they're going to create something, it has to be perfect so they can post it and it looks, you know, great next to all of these other professional artists and crafters posting stuff on social media. And the reality is your first one is not going to be perfect. So once you just take away that fear of the first time not being perfect, then everything can flow a little bit easier.
For sure. Yeah, that makes complete sense. And giving yourself grace to no beginner is perfect on day one. I mean, and even as you journey through being an artist and becoming better and better, there are still ebbs and flows. I mean, there are some days you're like, wow, I have zero inspiration and apparently can't draw or whatever, you know, whatever it is. And that's never the truth. It's just ebbs and flows in the growth process. So yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Well, tell me a little bit more, if you don't mind, about this dream job that you have. That sounds super cool. And obviously you're helping creatives, and I'm very curious because I know, you know, some of our listeners are crafters and creatives and would be interested potentially in what you all have to offer.
Yeah, awesome. So Jumprope is an app. It's a platform to learn how to do anything. So we make it super easy for creators to share helpful DIYs, art tutorials, even music lessons, recipes, fitness routines, whatever it is you like to create. You can share your skills on Jumprope. So you're creating these step-by-step videos. They live on the Jumprope platform. Once you publish them, it's a public platform and it's a free app. And then you can also download those videos to share them across all of your other platforms. So the app automatically formats, say, a horizontal version that you can put on your YouTube channel, and a vertical version you can put on IGTV, and a sped up vertical version you can use on TikTok, and several versions you can use on Pinterest to drive traffic to your Etsy shop or your blog or whatever it is. So we really try and make it super easy for creators to create video content, even if you've never done it before, and then share it to all of the platforms, all the places you have to be.
Well, that sounds amazing. What a great resource. Awesome. Well, yeah, if anyone wants to kind of check more into that, do you have a good way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jumprope is available in the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. So we're available on iPhone and Android. And we can also, you can also just visit jumprope.com and view the content there as well to kind of get a feel of it. And then if you are getting started in the app, if you're downloading the app now while you're listening and want some tutorials to get started, you'll see there's a Jumprope tips section in the app. And we've created a ton of tutorials to help you get started, share your content. We give you best practices, mistakes to avoid, all of that stuff that you need to know to get started on a new platform.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, especially if the content creator isn't particularly necessarily comfortable with video just yet or that kind of thing. That's very helpful. I'm glad you guys do that. Well, that's...
Exactly. And we actually, we know that video is such a barrier for people. So the way that you create on Jumprope, it's sort of more similar, honestly, to creating an Instagram story than it is to creating a long form video. The platform is all this step-by-step content that you can tap through at your own pace. So you're creating one card at a time in your tutorial instead of creating this long form video. So even if you're brand new to video, you can actually just put in process photos of your art process or your craft process and create Jumprope content just from photos to get started even.
Ooh, even better. Very cool. Well, yeah, definitely. I would encourage anyone who's interested in taking advantage of an incredible platform to go and check out Jumprope and see if it might be a good fit for you, because that sounds exactly like a fantastic way to grow your business and your following. So I definitely encourage anyone who's interested to definitely do that.
Yeah. And even I do want to say too, as artists, because this is something that I feel encouraged by as a creator myself and working on this side of Jumprope, seeing the type of content that succeeds on this platform just makes me so happy, because it does not matter if you have an existing large audience, which I know for people trying to get started, for crafters, especially in artists and content creators trying to get started on Instagram or TikTok, there's all of this pressure on what size your following is. And since Jumprope is a newer platform, it is not about the size of your following. It is not about the size of your audience. It's really about if your content is valuable. So is your content helpful? Is it detailed so people can follow along? Are you teaching something interesting? That's the content that's going to really succeed on Jumprope, whether or not you have a following anywhere else. So it's really encouraging for me to see creators from all different all different stages in their career sort of succeed on Jumprope just because their content is just plain good.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, no, that is fantastic. And very cool. Yeah, I'm excited to go check it out myself as well. So awesome. Yeah. Well, and so you also co-host this podcast. So yeah, tell us a little bit maybe more about the podcast and what y'all...
Yeah, so Craft Hangout we call it an inspiration destination podcast. So it actually, fits, I think, seamlessly right in with the style of podcast that you have, Lindsay. At Craft Hangout, we are 3 co-hosts. So Eliza is the creator and host, and then myself and Lilu Thatcher are the co-hosts. And we interview a different guest or guests each week and really try and tell their story and, narrow it down to some really interesting takeaways for our audience as well. So if you are a professional crafter, blogger, craft hobbyist, entrepreneur, there will be some sort of takeaways for you from each episode.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, that sounds incredible. Yeah, and how can we listen to that? Is it sort of available everywhere podcasts are?
Yes, it is. We also release through Podbean, and you can find us at just crafthangout.com, or we're available wherever you get your podcasts.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, this has been very inspirational. I just loved hearing all your stories, and I'm just always so interested in how opportunities can create other opportunities when you're open. And so I just think your life story so far has been such a perfect example of that, and your openness and your willingness to explore so many different styles of creativity even. So awesome. Thank you for that. That was great. And I have 3 questions that I always like to ask my guests, if you're okay with that.
I'm ready for it.
Okay. So first of all, how do you personally define art, or what is art to you?
So my answer is very simple, and I just feel art is creative expression. And I want to be really clear in saying that it can be any creative expression. Crafting is art. Obviously, as you know, like dancing, performance is art. Whether you are creating art in your bedroom or a professional studio, if this art ends up in the trash or hangs in a gallery, it's your creative expression and it's art.
I love that. I love that. Okay, and then what do you think is the most important role of an artist?
This one is hard. I think that it's just to share your perspective, whatever it is. And again, I mean, this might be very obvious from the way I'm answering these questions, but I just feel like, art is for everyone. So I just think the most important role is to share your perspective. And if that perspective is, something deep that people have to think about, or if you're making an important political commentary, or you're just, making things because it's cute and your perspective is you want to cheer people up and make them happy, and that's the point of it, then all of that is valid. So I think it's just sharing your perspective, whatever that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and then my final question, and then I'll define my terms a little bit, but do you think that art should be inclusive or exclusive? And by that I mean, with inclusive, an artist putting their work out into the world and providing some context behind it, whether it's a title or show notes or the inspiration, basically just having a little bit of background for the viewer, versus exclusive, referring to an artist who puts their work out there but doesn't provide the context, so it's left entirely up to the viewer to decide what they will.
I definitely feel like there's a place for both. As a consumer of art, there are times when I enjoy both of these, and obviously, like having gone to art school, I totally appreciate the exclusive type of art, like if we're talking about it in these terms, but I personally lean more towards inclusive. I think that maybe that just comes too from like me being so drawn to crafts and handicrafts and like folk art type of work, is it's just so tied to the story behind it that I like having that context. And even like if I'm thinking about, crafty, artsy content creators that I follow or that we have creating on Jumprope, like I like when they share a little bit of a personal story about something, whether it's why they created this piece of art, or they're creating it to celebrate a season or entertain their kids or simplify something where they're an expert so it's more accessible for beginners. Like I just like hearing the story behind it. So I think I lean a little bit more towards inclusive in this sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes complete sense. And especially because of the way you were talking about how much you found that you enjoy sharing. Now, teaching, I would say, is a little bit different, but it's still, that's sort of your nature, it sounds like, is to share and provide, some background.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Well, okay, great. And I know how we can get in touch with the podcast or kind of follow the podcast and the app. Is there any other way that we can get in contact with you if we want to learn more, just want to follow your journey? Is there a way for us to do that?
Yeah, so I share all of my work on Jumprope, obviously, and on Instagram, and some on TikTok, and my username across all of these platforms is Jessie Katz Greenberg, all one word.
Perfect. Awesome. And I'll definitely be posting links to that too, so that if you're curious, you can just go to the show notes and easily click on all of that. Well,
awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today, Jessie. I really appreciate you. I love your stories, and I really appreciate how inspiring you are and how much you inspire others to be creative and encourage that. And even if it's just starting on the smallest little step, you're right there supporting that. So that's special, and what you bring to the world adds a lot of value and beauty. So thank you. And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. I loved getting a chance to talk to you and kind of dig deeper into those questions of what art is. And it was just really a great time. So thank you so much, Lindsey.
Of course. And thank you also so much to everyone who's listened to this episode. And if you're feeling as inspired as I am right now, I would love if you would share this with a friend or two, and we will catch you next time. If you have a story to share with us, we would love that so much. And I hope your day has been artfully told. Hi, friends. I wanted to share with you another podcast that I think you're going to fall in love with just as I have. It's called Harlem with a View, and it is hosted by Harlem Lennox, who was a previous guest of mine on Artfully Told and a dear friend. Just because it looks easy doesn't mean it is. There is so much that goes into the work of a creative. She wants to know how the artists got into their line of work, what inspires them, but most importantly, what keeps them going. She asked them about how they make it through the blood, sweat, and tears. She wants to know what it's like to live this creative life, the good, the bad, the ugly, and even the magical. So she goes behind the scenes with creatives from different genres, and she explores their history, their take on life, and talks about the business of art and the dedication of making art. She has a brilliant platform. I think you will fall in love. I highly recommend that you search for Harlem with a View. Thanks.